Well, hello and welcome back. Happy New Year. This is the second day of the brand new 2024. And I just wanted to give you a quick lesson, or not even a lesson really, just something to share something really encouraging for us. And the title of this is, What is Your Red Sea God is Bringing You to? And I want you today to identify your Red Sea. And is it an impossible feat God is doing for you, or that he wants to prophesy for you? And, I think about things that people could see as impossible. God might tell you that you're going to be a church leader one day, and you've only maybe once led a Bible discussion group or something, or maybe God said you're going to be a CEO, and you've only worked at McDonald's or Wendy's or one of these places. You're going to be a CEO of a big company. Or God's going to give you a house, or God's going to give you a child past your childbearing years, or even give you a husband and a wife. When it looks impossible, you might even at this point you might even be unemployed, homeless, or whatever, you name it, and that might be your physical situation at the moment. I want to give you a couple of good reasons why God gave the Israelites the Red Sea. And first of all, for myself, I would say that God gave me a prophecy, and it seems impossible. Like it seems like, from my past experiences in life, things I've made, just weaknesses, mistakes, failures. It just looks impossible. Like it looks just like what Moses faced in his time. And I'm like, not saying it was the Red Sea, but in actuality, but it just feels like this looks impossible. Like if I was just to take it at one big bite and say, God, how in the world is this going to work? And it was just as impossible as the Israelites standing before. They had the Red Sea on one side, and they had Pharaoh's army on the other, which was the biggest army most powerful army that existed at the time. And here, these ragtag bunch of people, sitting right between. And God, in my life, He's given me multiple confirmations, and even given me smaller miracles that build up to this big thing that He wants in my life. And I can't quite give what it is away, because basically you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to share your prophecy, or else you might delay it. So that's what I'm not doing, because I don't want to delay it for myself. And if we'll take a look in a second, but in Exodus chapter 3, starting in verse 1, God did an extraordinary thing to get Moses' attention. Like He does for us. He gives us something out of the ordinary to get our attention. And then if you think about it, He uses Moses' biggest failure to exalt His glory, God's glory. I mean, He did the thing. He used a thing that was Moses' biggest weakness. He turns it around, and He turns it into this enormous, giant miracle, series of miracles. And because if you remember, Moses was he was a fugitive. He was wanted for murder because he killed and he was wanted by the most powerful person on the earth at the time, which is Pharaoh, right? So, if God wants to He'll take your biggest failure and use it for His biggest glory, And I know for me in my life, it felt like I was at the wrong place at the wrong time kind of situations, but at a certain point in my life, I just surrendered to God. I said, God, I just surrendered everything in my life to God, whatever it was, physically I had in my life. I just said, okay, God, it's yours, and do with me as you may. So let's turn over to Exodus chapter 3, starting verse 1. It says, Meanwhile, Moses was shepherding the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. Then the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire within a bush. As Moses looked, he saw that the bush was on fire, but it was not consumed. So Moses thought, I must go over there and look at this remarkable sight. Why isn't this bush burning up? When the Lord saw he had gone over to look, God called out from the bush. Moses, Moses, here I am, he answered. Do not come closer, he said. Remove the sandals from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he continued, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, I have observed the misery of my people Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their oppressors, and I know about their sufferings. I've come down to rescue them from the power of the Egyptians, to bring them from the land to a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. the territory of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, Jebusites. Phew. The Lord gave, the Israelites' cry for help has come to me, and I also have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing him. Therefore go. I am sending you to Pharaoh so that you may lead my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses asked God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, that I should bring the Israelites out of Egypt? He answered, I certainly will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that I have sent you. When you bring the people out of Egypt, you will all worship God on this mountain. Sounds like that promise was a good promise, but it didn't sound very impressive to Moses, apparently, at the time. It says that in verse 13, it says, then Moses said to God, ask God, if I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of our fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What should I tell them? God replied to Moses, I am who I am. This is who you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent you to me to you. Man, the writing in this English. God also said to Moses, say this to the Israelites, Yahweh, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever. This is how I am to be remembered in every generation. So basically, that's what he does. And he gives them those two things. And, I was going to make a point of this, is that God gives us, or he'll give you, or he'll give you a prophecy like Moses, and basically, what are the reasons for it? Or why does he do it? The first thing is to glorify himself, right? To give God glory, himself. The second thing is he wants to elevate you. He wants great things for your life, and he wants everyone that will see that it's done by the power of God. The third thing is he wants to train and test our faith. So he wants to see if we're legit, if we really are holding to what he says, his promise. If that's, he wants to train us to help us to grow and also to test our faith. And the fourth thing is, and as well, our obedience to him. That was point number 3. God gives us in point number 4, God gives us even more glory than the prophecy, which is amazing. And so, God, if you look at Moses, God interrupts his normal, boring life. He was on the run. So Moses was running from the charges against him. He basically had these murder charges. He had a murder rap against him. And if you really think about it, his life was kind of a failure up to this point. At least it seemed that way. And he hadn't lived up to his potential. He was the son, or he was raised under Pharaoh. So he had this incredible training. He had probably a lot of knowledge. He had the wealth at that time because he was raised up underneath Pharaoh. And so he hadn't lived up to the potential. He was on the run. He was living in this wilderness area near the mountain of God, as it was called. And so he was an underachiever. And you look at all these things, and it doesn't look very good, like where Moses started off. This is kind of like when God gives us the prophecy. It doesn't, in the beginning, it doesn't seem very, it doesn't seem like much. It doesn't seem like, I'm like, God, why is this? Why is it not going quicker? Why is it not happening faster? And so it's and then if you think about it, the second thing was that it was a huge task that God asked of Moses. And you think about it, he just gives him the first thing he tells him. He says, the first promise he tells him to go. He tells him to go, and then he says that you tell the Israelites you're going to sacrifice on this mountain. And it wasn't a very impressive kind of thing to say. I mean, it was a prophecy, but it wasn't like, oh wow, okay, gee, but he did tell me they're gonna sacrifice. They're gonna go over to this other place where Moses was right now, and they're gonna be there at one point or another. And of course, it was impressive, but it wasn't, for him to go to these people and say, well, yeah, come with me. It's kind of like, okay, and then God tells him at the end of this in the scripture in Exodus chapter 3 that you're going to steal. Basically, God's going to deliver all the people from Moses, and you're going to steal the wealth of the Egyptians. Like, you're going to basically steal their gold and silver. They're going to give it to you as you leave. And then God gives them a staff, and turns it into a snake and back into a staff, and he gives him these little signs, and then he does the thing with puts his arm in the pocket kind of deal with leprosy, and puts it back in, it doesn't have leprosy, and so he gives him these little signs, little tricks, I guess is what I would say, little magic tricks, and that's what he tells him to go back to the people. And I mean, think about you today. If you did that, God tells you to do something huge like that, and then he gives him a couple little magic tricks. It seems like magic tricks. They're not, obviously, they're miracles, and that's what he has to go with the people. He has to go and convince all the people this is what is going to be done for you. And then finally, in chapter 4, verse 10, we'll get to it in a second, actually. Yeah, chapter 4, verse 10, Moses tells God, he basically tells him, I don't want to do it. Moses, in chapter 4, verse 10, he says, but Moses replied to the Lord, please, Lord, I have never been eloquent, either in past or recently since you have been speaking to your servant, because I'm slow and hesitant in speech. So he starts making excuses. And he basically tells God, I don't want to do it. And so anyways, that's the point we're at. And but look at, we're going to look at the second, and in chapter 14, of Exodus chapter 14, starting verse 19. Now all these miracles are done. So now Moses God tests Pharaoh's heart. Pharaoh always heart hardens because they want to keep their slaves, and they keep on doing. God keeps on doing a bigger and bigger miracle and more judgment upon Pharaoh, and finally the Israelites are left to go at the last after the last plague. They even let them take their animals with them so they can worship. And starting in verse 19, it says, then the angel of God, who was going in front of the Israeli forces, moved and went behind them. The pillar of cloud moved in front of them and stood beside them, or behind them. It came between the Egyptian and Israelite forces. The cloud was there in the darkness, yet it lit up in the night. So neither group came near the other all night long. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. The Lord drove the sea back with a powerful east wind all that night and turned the sea into dry land. So the waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with the waters like a wall to them on their right and on their left. The Egyptians set out in pursuit, all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, all his horsemen, and went into the sea after them. Then during the morning watch, the Lord looked down from the Egyptian forces, from the pillar of fire and cloud, and threw them into confusion. He caused their chariot wheels to swerve and make them drive with difficulty. Let's get away from Israel, the Egyptians said, because Yahweh is fighting for them against Egypt. Then the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may come back on the Egyptians, on their chariots and horsemen. So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea turned its normal depth. While the Egyptians were trying to escape from it, the Lord threw them into the sea, and the waters came back and covered the chariots and horsemen, the entire army of Pharaoh that had gone after them into the sea. None of them survived. What an amazing, amazing miracle that was done for them. And, and you think about it, what God promised Moses in the beginning, he never promised them he was going to do the plagues. He never promised them that he was going to part the Red Sea, destroying the most powerful army on the earth in the process. He just told them, you're going to worship on this mountain. And he gave them a little trick, basically a little miracle, which is amazing when you think about it. And then God, Moses had to trust God that he was going to do all those things and use him, despite the fact that he was basically a wanted criminal in Egypt at the time, and they were trying to kill him. So I just want to give you this encouragement that, first of all, ask God, what is my Red Sea? And trust God that he's going to deliver you from whatever that is once he's promised he's going to deliver from the Red Sea. And I want to leave you with that encouragement. Hope you have a happy new year, and hope you are God rewards you with whatever promises he's going to give you. And please subscribe, and hope you enjoyed, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.